Today's episode is brought to you by Mazars. SoundCartel. You may have heard the term culture eats strategy for breakfast. Well, Greg Halse reckons you should be careful that COVID doesn't eat your culture for lunch. From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. COVID's had a bigger impact on workplace culture than most other big disruptors in recent decades. So says Greg Halse, partner at accountants and business advisory firm Mazars. Greg says with Christmas approaching, now's a good time to reassess your company culture and embrace the idea that what your staff do is more than just a job, that how they feel and interact at work is important for them and the business. Even if you're feeling confident about where your business is heading, like an insurance policy, it's a good idea to review with your staff the impact that COVID's had on them. He tells Chris Ashmore it's worth having a COVID culture plan.
As a minimum, it will send a signal to your employees that you're prepared to listen, that you're prepared to adapt, you're prepared to understand what they've been through. And my gut is telling me that if you even embrace those questions and go there, you might find that there are some nice gems that come out of it. So if you ask questions like simple ones, how are you going? What have you learnt about yourself as a result of the last 18 months, 24 months? What have we learnt about our team and how we operate? What can we do better? I just think that those reflection questions are really useful to send you down maybe some creative options.
Mm-hmm. Haven't we managed big shifts in the past? How's this any different?
This one does feel different because I'm feeling it could be the cascade of many other rolling changes over the years. We've been quite good in Australia at managing to adapt and batten down the hatches and get through the impacts and move forward. So if we think back to the Y2K fiasco or the GFC experience we all had or the internet boom and bust, we seem to be quite good at just adapting in Australia, and we seem to keep going with our economic growth. We seem to stick to our same views about the world of work and what I call our leadership sacred cows. And so we just kept barreling along. And this time it feels really, really different.
So what is different this time?
Well, this feels like those other ones impacted your external operating environment. So you can imagine with the GFC, it was all about the economic fundamentals, or the tech advances, it was all about the internet. But this one feels really different, and it feels so pervasive that it's affected everything about our business. Every layer, every job title, every sector of the economy. So this one really impacts the human capital asset of each business. And you know that glib line we use about people are your most important asset. Well, this time that asset has been profoundly and even personally impacted in a number of ways. So this has been a really personal impact that I think we need to be aware of. Within 18 months, we were suddenly dealing with a very different way of work. So I think the jolt to our system and that on top of the broader global volatility that we've all been dealing with in the last 10 years, that really has made this context I think we're dealing with a lot tougher to deal with. And my suggestion is let's take a breather just before the Christmas break because it's been a hell of a year and spend some time just asking yourself, how did I lead during that time? Does anything need to change? Because I think the good news is that you'll find some beautiful positives sprouting out of this time of anxiety and uncertainty. And we might find some new ways of working or new ways of setting up your work rituals and designing employment. So be open to that.
Mm. Well, you spoke earlier about insuring ourselves against the risks of these changes coming down the road. What do you mean?
The best insurance is to be flexible, to be open, to be willing to admit that you don't have all the answers, be willing to share your leadership obligations around. I think the best insurance is to have a mindset that is what we call above or below the line thinking, or the high road or the low road. In other words, really you've got two options. You either say, no, I don't care if things have changed, I'm going to keep ploughing on. And my cynical side comes through from that, because I think if you keep pouring money into the people management processes from the last century, where we all know in our gut that the return on investment of those people management processes that we used in the last century, the return on investment is shocking and the impact is short-term. You remember the tricks of the pizza nights or the massages or sales incentives or using more performance appraisals or working out how you can control your employees even more. I mean, that's a 1980s, 1990s management trick. And what we're saying is that let's move into this new century of thinking, which is a lot more about the gems within your human beings. And you'll be surprised if you find people who are emotively connected to their work, not just the case of, nah, mate, it's just a job. That's not good enough anymore. We used to kind of ignore that and say, yeah, it's just a job. But in this new way of working, people need to feel something about their job. They need to feel something about their customers and the work they do. So I think if you can find examples of that in your business and you can celebrate those senses of pride and you can reinforce it, lock it down and show each person why they matter, why their work matters, why they desperately need to find what they're good at in the job and then be brave enough to use it. I think if you do that, you overlay it with a culture of kindness and empathy, that's where you start building a good culture.
Well, these gems you talk about that you say we need to look for, any examples?
Yeah, a recent example that came to mind was about a trucking company that we were working with when the executive team was trying to work out how do we retain these truck drivers because turnover is a real problem. And as part of this exercise, they asked a number of drivers about really what was it that factored into their retention? Why did they stay with this company? And the example that popped through was a driver explained to them that the reason he was proud of his work, proud of the company he worked for, and proud of his team around him was A, because of the organisation, but B, most importantly, it was because he was a proud father, because he had put his kids through uni by being a truck driver. And he felt that that left a legacy for his family, for himself. And you could feel as he was telling this story, there was a moment of real respect. You could feel him feeling more proud about what he was doing and who he was and what he stood for. And no amount of pizzas or smart values stuck on a reception wall or other tricks of the trade would have created a human moment like this. And just by listening to this person, respecting him for what he was, I reckon he was locked into the business for another 10 years.
You know, Mazars has been a long-time supporter of SoundCartel, and now they're helping us bring you this podcast. To find out how Mazars can support your business, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.
So the message is be more human. Is that a bit idealistic though? What's the likelihood of managers doing this soft people stuff?
It does sound idealistic, I agree, but in reality this soft stuff is actually hard stuff. It's this soft stuff that makes businesses fly. It's this soft stuff that beats competitors every day. And you remember how we had to quickly adapt in the pandemic. And who would have thought that we could trust our teams as much as we do now? It would have been unthinkable 2 years ago. But the problem with and the reality with this soft stuff, because human beings are unpredictable, is that not many leaders lean into this bravely or courageously, because sometimes you don't know where it's going to end. If you think about how recently these tech companies have reset their work agreements with some employees, where they've almost said to their employees, you know, you can work where you like, you can work when you like. The only thing you need to do is deliver on the contracted outcomes, and the rest of the time is theirs. So these kinds of employees can take as much leave as they like, as much sick leave as they like. The only requirement is to get the job done. So you can imagine that that's a direct and dramatic, scary change. But we're not suggesting everyone needs to go through a significant change like that. Maybe just simple minor adjustments to, how do we work as teams? What feedback should we give each other? What sort of degree of micromanagement do we need in our teams? So we're saying let's work with those two options, but at least think them through. I'm convinced that even the smallest changes will see a shift in trust, discretionary effort, improved empathy, and the benefits will be in the order of a 30% advantage. If you can nail this soft stuff, whether you're a woolen mill in Wangaratta or a fit-out firm in Melbourne or a law firm in the suburbs, if you can nail that soft stuff, there are gains to be had everywhere.
Well, it's all very good, Greg. I can see how this could be a flavour of the month thing at a big corporation, but for a smaller business with limited resources, what are the practicalities for them? How can they implement this?
I guess you're right. I do think it could become just the flavour of the month and we all move on. The real world of work is where these small and medium-sized businesses exist, because employees can smell trumped-up HR fake things a mile away if it's not authentic. So instead of the 1980s way of setting up your vision and then setting your values on the wall and then having everyone comply to those vision and those values, let's start with the human being and let's start speaking to each individual and saying, okay, well, where are you? What are you thinking about in terms of COVID? How does your job link to the changes in COVID? Those questions are crucial to making us realise how they're truly feeling. And I think you'll get three answers from that. One person might say, look, I'm not sure about all of this stuff. I don't know where I can add value anymore. I'm feeling uncertain. And that's where you can build from there and help the person discover why they matter, how they matter, and you can really build their sense of self. Other people might say, well, I love it here. I can see exactly how this job supports my purpose, and then you just almost reinforce it and hero it and lock it in. And then there may be a group of people that say, no, mate, this is just a job. It will always be just a job. And I'm suggesting that's when we should be pushing back in this new world to say, nah, you matter. Your job does matter. You are a crucial part of who we are, because you'll be missed if you're not here. So you do your best as a leader to try and connect with this emotionally, show your own vulnerability as a leader, and if you can try and show respect about how important this human being is, you might be able to get the person to start feeling something about their job. If they still don't feel anything about their job, you might as well just get a machine, because you'll probably get a better return from that. So our first step is to really say, let's start with the human being and build out from there. And then we move to a phase that we call the we phase, which in reality is human beings like connecting with other people. So whilst they might be good on their own, they do like connecting with other people. They do like to know that their work impacts others and that they can picture who their job matters for. So I'm saying we then move to a phase where you say, well, how are we going to support each other? How do we get work done together? What are our rituals as a team? What are the obstacles in the way? And that kind of collaborative conversation builds that sense of culture from the bottom up. And then finally, it's about saying, okay, let's all agree what our legacy should be. So for the truck driver, the legacy for him was kids going to uni. That was the most important thing he wanted to leave behind. For others, it might be, well, it's the building I build and the walls that I build that are straight. That might be his legacy or her legacy. Another one might be just, I want to leave this firm in a better place than it was. I want it to have a proud reputation. That's my legacy. But if we can bottle everyone's emotional feelings about the way they work and why they work, if you bottle that and describe that to the new people that join your business and for future generations, I think you've got a real important asset to hang on to.
That was Greg Halse, partner at accountants and business advisory firm Mazars. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow at BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Mazars. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.